Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name's Bria, and I love everything books. If you're a regular around here, you might be wondering, where am I? Because this is not my dorm. That is because I am home for spring break, so this is my room. And I thought it might be a fun video to do a little bookshelf tour, because you've seen my bookshelf back at college, so you know all the books that are like kind of on my TBR or that I've read recently, but I have so many books at home. A lot that I've read, and then a lot that I want to read. I was really into like thrifting last summer and going to like library book sales, and it was like per bag, so it'd be like $10 for a bag, so I'd get all the books I wanted and then just fill up the rest with kind of random books that I picked up. So there's a lot of those that honestly I like haven't heard anything about, don't know anything about, but are on my bookshelf. So I thought it'd be fun to do a little tour. So let's go. Also, today I started my pangobooks account, which I found out through Faith's Reading Things, which love her, so good. If you watch my favorite booktuber video, she's in that because she's one of my favorite booktubers. But so I posted, I think like almost 10, maybe more, like 10 plus books on there. I don't know, we'll see how that works. I've never really used it before. These are all the books that I posted on there, so if you're interested in any of those, they're on there. I'll link it below. But let's go to my bookshelf. It's actually not in my room. It's in this little alcove. It's technically our front door, but bookshelf, literally so many books. Welcome to my bookshelf. I honestly haven't really organized this since last summer, and I haven't been back home in a few months, so I honestly don't remember a lot of the books that are on here, especially the ones that are unread. For the most part, it is pretty organized. So this top row, all of these books right here are all like theology books or like Bible devotionals, that kind of stuff. And then this stack is all like classics or like stuff I read in high school, some of my favorites there. And then these are kind of like psychology books and stuff like that. And then this shelf is kind of like thrillers, dystopian, Twilight, and then Ranger's Apprentice. I actually just brought this back down. This used to be up at college. This row is kind of all over the place. There's some historical fiction, and then this kind of romance, and then literary fiction, and then Land of Stories, which I also just brought down this weekend. And then this row is 2024 reads. So all of these books have been read, so it's kind of just a random smattering of genres, but in the order that I read them last year. And then I don't think you can see this row, but the bottom row is all books that I have not read, but that are in series that I do not have everything in the series. So yeah, let's go through one by one. Maybe not entirely one by one, but it's kind of an overview of what I have. Let's start with the top row. So the first 3 books here are just Bibles. So I have a Christian Standard Bible, and then I believe this is NIV. This is actually the Bible that I got for graduation, so it's special. It has my name on it, and purple because GCU, so that's always special. And then this one, this is so fun, oh my goodness. This is the Crossway Bible. It's literally the coolest thing ever. So this is just the Book of Psalms, and you might be like, why is that so big if it's just the Book of Psalms? So it has the entire Book of Psalms on one side of the page, then the other side is completely blank for taking notes. So it's so good. I have the Book of Mark in this, so I've been going through that and it's been so good. So I eventually want to get the entire Bible in this format, but there's so many. So yeah, I have Psalms. And then the next chunk on the shelf is like just devotionals. So some that I've just picked up over the years or thrifted. So I have one on Galatians. This book called Living the Exchange, which I went through, I want to say like in middle school through youth group. So I haven't picked up this book in forever, but I remember going through it and it's really good. And I guess I didn't get all the way through. I barely started it. Maybe I'll pick that up sometime. And then Emma Mae McDaniel, I love her. I have, I think, all of her books. But I went to a conference the summer after high school, and she spoke there, and she's so sweet. I love her. So this is this is one of her devotionals, and then also Beloved, which is also by her. And then she has one other book, which is, here it is, all caps U. I got this as, I believe, a graduation present from a friend, and it's a 30-day devotional that took me 2 years to go through because I started it and then forgot about it, and then I finished it last year, so that's why it was down on that shelf. But I figured I'd show it to you now because it's by Emma McDaniel. And then here's another devotional. No idea where I got this one. I think I thrifted this at some point. I will always take a free devotional. This series, oh my goodness. Hold on, there's a lot of books. Oh, there's so many books. Okay, this is the Bad Girls of the Bible, like, series, I guess, by Liz Curtis Higgs. I love the idea of this devotional so much, and I started it probably, like, early high school, and I never finished it, but I really want to get back into it because it's so good. Let me put this down so I can show you. Basically, there's 4 books, and then there's the book, and then there's, like, a devotional book with it. So, like, this is the first one, Bad Girls of the Bible, and then the devotional book, and then, like, the workbook next to it. And basically, this book is taking female biblical characters, and Liz Curtis Higgs rewrote their story into a modern retelling, basically. So you read the passage in the Bible, and then you read, like, the modern retelling of it, and then there's a whole devotional about, like, that character, and it's so good. Oh my goodness. So, like, there's Eve, Potiphar's wife, Lot's wife, the woman at the well, Delilah, Sapphira, Rahab, Jezebel, Michael, and the sinful woman. And it's so good. I started this. The workbook is partially filled out, and because I really only got through, like, halfway through this book, but then that's just the first book. There's 4 books and workbooks with them. So I really want to get back into this. It's such a good series. Definitely recommend, and I need to finish it. And then I have the College Girl Survival Guide. This is a book I randomly picked up my senior year of high school because, yeah, I was, going into college the next year, and this is by a Christian author, so it's a Christian perspective on what going to college is like and all the struggles you might or are gonna face in college, like roommate troubles and all sorts of stuff like that, and like a biblical perspective on it. And to be honest, I never really finished the book. I think I read a few excerpts. Each chapter is like its own problem that you're gonna face in college, so I kind of just read what was applicable to me. Yeah, kind of just a random book. And then this next section is more like theology books. So I have Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper. This was a graduation gift from my church, and I still haven't read it, but I've heard so many good things about John Piper, and I'm sure it is a phenomenal book. I just have not read it. C.S. Lewis. Oh, I love C.S. Lewis. Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. I want to get this whole series. I guess it's not really a series, but like all the C.S. Lewis books like have this format and like look to it. I've read the Screwtape Letters, which is down here. Yeah, there it is. But I have not read Mere Christianity, and I've heard so many good things about it, so definitely want to read this one. Then we got Trusting God by Jerry Bridges. I do not remember where I got this book from, honestly. I feel like I've had this forever. Yeah, just another good theology book that I want to read, but I just have not gotten around to it. I have way too many books, as you can probably tell. Next is According to Plan by Graham Goldsworthy, I think. I don't know. This I got actually when I went to GCU on a trip in high school, and it's really ironic because I got this like in high school, and then last spring I was in a Bible class at GCU, and this was the textbook. Isn't that crazy? At GCU textbooks are online, but I was like, I literally own the book. Like, what are the chances? But yeah, this is a good book to read. Even though it was my class textbook, I did not read it cover to cover. I just kind of read whatever. Like when I was researching for like essays and stuff, I would read parts of it. But pretty good book. Next is Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership by Ruth Haley Barton. Again, another book. I have no idea where this came from. I just have it. And I'm sure it's a good book, but I just haven't read it. There seems to be a theme here. Next is The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. I think this is another book I thrifted. Yeah, I'm a sucker for books. If there's a book and it's like at a thrift store and it's a theology book, I will probably get it. I have too many. Next is, I have a few books by Max Lucado, which I read a lot of his like children's books growing up. And so I remember I love those. So I have, whenever I see his books in a thrift store, I will grab them. So we have In the Grip of Grace. Again, don't really know what it's about. I just know it's probably a good book, and when I get around to reading it, it will be good. And then You Are Never Alone, also by Max Lucado. Again, don't know what it's about. I just saw that he wrote this book and I grabbed it. And that's it for like theology / like biblical books. A lot of mine, this is probably like half of them. The other half are up at GCU. Next is classics. First up is Lord of the Rings. I actually don't know where the other book went because I have The Hobbit and then it's a trilogy. I think my brother read it for a class and I'm not sure where it went, but I read The Hobbit before for a class, and then I have not read the actual Lord of the Rings. I tried one time in high school, and it's such a different style than I'm normally used to, so I have not read it, but so many people think it's a great book, so I really should get around to reading it, and I've seen the movies and those are pretty good, so yeah, should probably read that at some point. Next I have some more classics. There's A Tale of Two Cities. This is a lot of these are ones that I've read in high school, so yeah, I've read this one in high school. pretty good, but also classics just aren't really my genre. And then The War of the Worlds, I remember liking this one, I think because it's a much shorter book, but yeah, pretty good book. And then Puddinghead Wilson, this is another one I read in high school. I didn't really love this one as much. I will keep it on my shelf because I read it and I keep books like trophies. Next up is The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. I believe I got this as a gift for graduation from someone. But yeah, just haven't read it. I guess this could also technically go in like the theology section, but it's also classic. Next is Friendly Persuasion. I love this book. This is kind of like a collection of short stories following a family in, I don't remember exactly what time period, but it's like the Quaker life and just kind of like living on a farm and like going to church and just all the kind of stuff that comes with that. And yeah, I remember really liking it. Next is Fahrenheit 451. This is another book that I read in class. There's a theme here. But I really like this one. This is a dystopian book about like book burnings and like books being banned, hence Fahrenheit 451, because apparently that's the temperature like at which books burn or something like that. Yeah, I really like this book. I should probably read it again. Now we're into books that I read in college, like for classes. Oh my gosh, I'm fine. You saw nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. Nothing happened. But Brave New World. This book is wild. Honestly, if I didn't have to read it for class, I would have not read this. This book is crazy. It's like a dystopian world, but it's like also kind of a utopia. Well, I guess people think it's a utopia. It's really a dystopia. Yeah, this book was just weird and it was, I guess, let's see if I can pronounce his name. Aldous Huxley is kind of his vision of what he thought the world was going to kind of turn into. And so, which is kind of the purpose of all dystopian books, kind of like as a warning. But yeah, this book was weird. Next is Arctic Dreams by Barry Lopez. This was kind of like an environmental book. Honestly, I don't remember much of it. We really only had to read the first few chapters of it. Yeah, I remember the prose being really pretty, but that's about all I remember. And then Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. I love this cover. It's so pretty, the green and like the brown. I love it. And again, I only read the first few chapters for class. But it's about like environmentalism, and that's kind of all I remember. I probably won't be reading any of these books, but they're pretty and they will stay on my shelves. Next is another book that I read in college. This is The Double Helix by James D. Watson. This chronicles the discovery of the double helix of DNA and like the story behind that and like how it was discovered and like who was involved in that. It was definitely a really interesting story. I think out of all the books that I've had to read for class in college, this is probably my favorite. It's also because it's like telling about the story. It's a nonfiction book, which is one that I don't usually read, but I think I enjoyed it from what I remember. It's been a few years now. This is another book that I read in high school. It's Warriors Don't Cry by Melba Pattillo Beals. This is a story about, not a story, this is nonfiction. This is a memoir about Brown versus Board of Education and about like the segregation in schools. And it's a really sad book, but also it's really good and really powerful. So definitely recommend from what I can remember from like 4 or 5 years ago, but good book. Next is The Art of Bouncing Back by Darlene Santori. The Honors College at GCU had a like conference, I think last year or the year before, and Coach Star was one of the speakers, so she handed out her books, and I have not read it, but it's probably really good. When she presented and spoke, it was really good, so I'm sure the book is really good too. I just haven't read it. Seems like I haven't read all these books, and that's true. Now we're into more of the psychology books. Emotional Fitness by Douglas Weiss. This was recommended to me by a family friend, along with actually a few of these. In the same way where you do like physical fitness to like be better, like physically healthy, then you also need to do emotional fitness to keep like your emotions healthy and like learn how to recognize your emotions and stuff and like regulate them. I've heard it's a really good book and I should probably read it. And Leadership and Self-Deception. This was also recommended by that same friend, and honestly, I don't really remember what this book is about. Like getting out of the box. I think that kind of sums up what it's about. Yeah, I don't know. I should read this. And then Permission to Feel. This book my mom read, and so I got myself a copy and then read a little bit of it. This is about, it says, unlocking the power of emotions to help our kids, ourselves, and our society thrive. And I think just the phrase permission to feel is really good, because a lot of people grow up thinking only positive emotions are okay, negative aren't, and that's not true. All emotions are okay and you need to feel them. And there's this really handy dandy chart just on the inside cover of the book, and it's so cool. Basically it has low energy to high energy and low pleasantness to high pleasantness. So it has like all the emotions kind of on this scale. And so it's really helpful for when you don't know what emotion you're feeling. You can kind of just go to the chart. Sometimes naming emotions can be hard. So yeah, another book that I should read. And then finally, The Emotion Code. This is just another book about emotions and like helping like understand the emotions we feel and like how to deal with them in a healthy manner. Especially as a behavioral health major, I should read all of these. Oh, that's the first shelf. Oh my goodness. This is taking longer than I thought it would. Okay. Next shelf. First up, we got Ashley Bell by Dean Koontz. This is a book that I actually found in one of those little free libraries. And I've heard that Dean Koontz is a really good author, so I grabbed it. And I don't really know what it's about other than I believe it's like a thriller, like suspense kind of a thing. Also, it's a thick book, so that's kind of why I haven't read it yet, because I'm a little scared of it. Another author that I've never read, James Patterson. This is First to Die. This is the first book in a extremely long series, and I didn't know that. I just knew that it was the first in the series, so I grabbed it. And yeah, it's just another one that I have not picked up. Probably really good. I don't know, I've never really read too many thrillers. I think I read like one last year. Next is 13 Reasons Why. Basically, I just know the premise of this book and I saw it at a thrift store, so I grabbed it. And honestly, I just know it's gonna be really sad because it's about suicide. And yeah, I haven't read it, but it's probably really good. So I'm excited to read it at some point. Just haven't got around to it. And then book of the month, we got The Three Lives of Kate K. This was, I believe, January. Yeah, January's book of the month. Dude, I ordered this so long ago, I don't remember what this is about. But book of the month, love them. Now we're into books that I've actually read. That's crazy. We got The Testing Trilogy. This is The Testing Trilogy. It's The Testing, Independent Studying, Graduation Day. And this is by Joelle Charbonneau. Charbonneau? I don't know how to say her last name. I'm so sorry. I love this series so much. This was one of my top series in middle school, along with like Hunger Games and Divergent, and like no one's ever heard of it. I don't know how I found it. I think I just found it at my library or something. But it's basically like the Hunger Games times Divergent, kind of. Basically, there is something like the Hunger Games in this world, but no one knows that it exists. It's kind of like hidden, and like once you go through it, you're brainwashed and you can't remember it. But it's so good, and the love interest is so adorable, and I love them so much. So if you like Divergent or the Hunger Games, read The Testing. It is so good. Okay, and then I'm not going to try to take this next series off the shelf because look, there's so many pages. I can't take all that off without dropping them all. But Twilight. You've probably heard of Twilight. There's literally so many books. There's Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Breaking Dawn is the like original series, and then there's some extras. But if you don't know, Twilight is about a vampire and a human who fall in love and kind of their story of that and going through that and like how in the world can a human and a vampire be in love? That's dangerous. But they live in a small town in Washington or is it Oregon? I don't remember. Wow, I should know that. I really like it. It's definitely a really cheesy book. It's not like the best thing ever written, but it's still pretty fun for what it is. And then there's kind of a few extras. The Short Second Life of Brie Tanner, and this is just a short novella about one of the characters that you briefly meet in the series and kind of her story of her life before she appears in the series. And then there's Midnight Sun, which is the story of Twilight, the first book, but from Edward's perspective, which she's the main character. And I honestly like this more than Twilight itself because I feel like the story is much more interesting coming from the vampire than the human. So yeah, if you've read Twilight and haven't read Midnight Sun, I definitely recommend it. And then the last special book in the series, this is actually an interesting version of it. So it's Life and Death, which is a Twilight retelling but gender swapped, and honestly it's not worth reading because it's literally the exact same story of Twilight, just gender swapped, which just makes it confusing to read, honestly, and there's like nothing new except for the ending. The ending is very different, which it was worth it to like go to the ending, but also you could skip the entire book and just read the end to get that. But this one's interesting because it has Twilight on one side and then you flip it over and it's Life and Death. So it's a hefty book. So I guess I have so many copies of Twilight because I have Twilight, the original book, then I have Midnight Sun, which is Edward's retelling, and then I have Twilight. Half this book is normal Twilight again, this exact book, and the other half is Twilight but gender swapped. So yeah, by the time I got through reading this whole series, I was so done with the Twilight plotline because I was just reading this book, 3-4 times? So yeah, maybe don't do that. Maybe just read the series and then come back later and read these. Or you can just honestly skip this one. But read Midnight Sun. Midnight Sun's good. Then Ranger's Apprentice. I've talked about this a lot in my past videos because this was a book that I read last year. Not a book. A series that I read last year. but there's basically 1 through 11 is the main series, and then these two are kind of prequels. And you might be wondering, why does it go 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11? And that's because when the author was writing it, there was kind of, in between book 4 and 5, there was a huge time gap. So what he wrote book 7 as chronologically it comes between 4 and 5, so I just have it on my shelf this way, because if I were to read it again, I'd want to read it in chronological order. So that's Rachel's Apprentice. Love that. 5 stars. So good. Oh my goodness. I feel like I've been talking for so long. We're only 2 shelves through. Okay. This shelf, for the most part, these are books that I got from the library sale that I was talking about earlier, so I really don't know anything about them. Actually, these first 2 books aren't even books. They're those fake books that open up and have like a little cavity inside. Not even real books, so we'll skip those. Okay, we got Folklore. Honestly, I'm just gonna go through and just say the titles of most of these books because I don't know what they're about. So, Folklore, Lady Clementine, The Orphan Collector, The Book Thief. This is actually one that I've heard the title of quite a bit, but no idea what it's about, but probably really good. The Librarian of Burned Gifts. What? The Librarian of Burned Books. Letters to the Lost. The Queen of the Night. The Clockmaker's Daughter. I actually started this book and got a chapter through and then was just not in the mood. So, yeah. But the cover's so pretty. It looks like a fun book and I probably would love it if I just sat down and read it. The Weight of a Piano. Okay, now we're into standalones, but they're all by the same author. These are Christian romances, so I am excited to read them. I just haven't gotten around to it. That's crazy. Lady of Milkweed Manor, The Bridge to Bell Island, and Shadows of Swanford Abbey. Continuing on to more books. The Rose and the Thistle, The Hidden Side. Okay, so that's all the way to here. So these are all mostly historical fiction, or like romance historical fiction kind of. I don't know why these 2 books are here. I guess because I've read all of the other Kira Cass books recently. But I love Kira Cass. She's one of my favorite authors of all time. This is The Betrothed and the Betrayed. I love this series so much. And it's really ironic because, so I follow Brooklyn and Bailey and I love them so much. I've been watching them for years. And Bailey's recently been doing like bookish videos and they're so fun to watch. But she did a reading 1-star books and somebody put The Betrothed as a 1-star book. These are 5 stars for me. And she read it and she agreed and she said it was a 1 star and that hurt. It's like, I love this book so much. I think the main character Hollis is so fun and I love her, and the romance is honestly, okay, the romance maybe isn't the best. It's kind of ironic what happens. It's just a really tragic story. If you like Kira Cass's, the rest of her books, like The Selection, The Siren, 1,000 Heartbeats, that kind of stuff, you'd probably like this. It's just really ironic that one of my favorite YouTubers gave it a 1 star. Next is The Cruel Prince. I want to read this book so badly, but I only have the first one, and knowing me, I'm gonna love this book, and then I'm not gonna have the second book, and that's gonna drive me crazy. So I want to get the rest of the series and then read it. Literally every booktuber that I follow has read The Cruel Prince and loved it. I'm so excited to read this book. Next up is a trilogy. It's A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Journey, and A Dog's Promise. And this is another series that I thrifted, so I don't really know what it's about, other than it's about a dog. And I think it's a dog that like reincarnates, maybe? I feel like that's what this is about. I don't really remember. I just know it's probably gonna be a sad book because it's about dogs. And guess what? I haven't gotten around to reading it. That's crazy. Next is Wonder. And I actually have Wonder and then 365 Days of Wonder, which is Mr. Brown's Precepts. So it's kind of like, I don't want to call it a devotional because it's not really devotional, but it's 365 days of like quotes and stuff like that. But I read Wonder in middle school and I remember loving it so much. And it's such a sad story, but it's such a good story. And I haven't read it recently, so I should probably read it again. I have way too many books on my TBR. It's a problem. But Wonder's a really good book. And then Where the Crawdads Sing. This is another book that I've heard the title so many times and I've never read it, never seen the movie. It is a movie, right? I feel like it is. But yeah, don't really know the plot. I think it's a murder mystery. Yeah, murder mystery, coming of age narrative. So probably a really good book because so many people rave about it. But guess what? Never read it. And then last but not least on the shelf is the Land of Stories series. Again, I read this recently in February, and so I just brought it down. I do not have space in my shelves at college, and that's becoming a problem here too. So yeah, Land of Stories. Okay, I'm gonna move the camera so that you'll be able to see the bottom 2 shelves. We're over halfway done. Oh my goodness. I have so many books, and I probably need to stop buying new books because I have so many to choose from. But yeah, let's move you. Oh right, last 2 shelves. And guess what? I've read this entire shelf. I mean, I guess I've read most of the second shelf, but that's besides the point. I guess I really haven't talked about any of these books because I started my YouTube channel at the end of last year. But I think for the most part, these are all kind of in order of when I read them. First up is Divergent. I'm not going to take those out because there's a lot of them. But Divergent, Insurgent, Allegiant, and 4. So it's a trilogy, and then 4 is kind of like short stories from 4's perspective. Such a good book. If you have not read Divergent, go read it. It's so good. If you haven't read it or don't know what it's about, it's a dystopian series where there are these 5 factions where everyone is born into them. When they become an adult, they can either choose to stay in that faction or go to another one. And each faction is based off of like values. So there's Abnegation, which values selflessness. Candor values honesty. Not me forgetting them. Erudite values knowledge and wisdom. Dauntless values like strength and bravery. And then finally, I think Amity. I'm probably pronouncing all of these wrong, honestly. Amity values like community and like diplomacy and like being nonviolent. And most people fit into one of the 5, but our main character, Beatrice, or she goes by Triss, does not fit into one of the 5, and you will find out why. But it is so good. I love that series so much. That's one of the series that really got me into reading in middle school. Next up is also by the same author who wrote Divergent, Veronica Roth, and that is Carve the Mark and the Fates Divide. This series is so good. It's a fantasy, and it follows like these royal families, and there's like fates and prophecies and all this stuff, and it's really, really good. I love the series so much. Next is The Vanishing Half. This is a book that I picked up in one of those little free libraries, and honestly just the cover really stuck out to me. And I didn't really like this book. I think I probably gave it like a 3-star. I don't quite remember. It follows a family through a pretty long span of years, and it's about an African American family in the South, and I don't really remember much other than that. It just wasn't my type. The Midnight Library. This I think I actually got the same day as The Vanishing Half. It's kind of a score, like 2 brand new books in a free little library. But the premise of this book is so cool. Basically, the Midnight Library is like, I think right when you're on the edge of death, you go into this library, and every single book in the library is like a different timeline of your life. Like if you had chosen something differently, how your life would have turned out. And so the main character of the story gets to go and like live her other lives and experience like, what if I had done this instead, or had said no to this or yes to this or whatever. It was really interesting. I think I gave it like a 4-star. Also the cover is just so pretty. Yeah, it was definitely a really interesting book. The Last Book in the Universe. This was a book that I also read, I think in high school, maybe even middle school, because it's kind of like a little kid's book. It's a dystopia, because it's like a YA. And to be honest, it's more like a middle school read. It's not like the best book ever written. It was definitely interesting. I remember liking it more when I read it when I was younger, and when I reread it this past year, it was just kind of okay. Next is The Shack. This book was crazy. Oh my goodness. So this book was made into a movie, and one of the songs, Hard Love, it's Lauren Daigle and someone else, I forget. Is it Need to Breathe? I feel like it's Need to Breathe and Lauren Daigle. But the song Hard Love, I had listened to for years, and I loved it. And so when I saw this book, and again, little free library, I recognized the cover, because that's, the cover art of the song. And I was like, oh, I've heard about this book. It's so interesting. Oh my goodness. Basically, the first few chapters of the book are kind of like a mystery thriller vibe, where there's this family, and I don't want to spoil it, but like, it was really intense. And then the rest of the book is the father of the girl who was murdered, and basically he goes and meets with God in the shack, and it's super interesting. Basically he meets with like God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, and he's just like kind of processing his trauma and like struggling with God, and it was so interesting. Oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely an interesting read if you're a Christian or have like really struggled with like traumatic things. I think this book could really help. Yeah, it was really interesting. I'd love to see the movie, although the movie, like if the book was gory, the movie is probably worse. But yeah, really interesting. Twice Freed. This is a retelling of the book of Philemon in the Bible, which Philemon is like a chapter, maybe 2 chapters long, so it's really short. Patricia St. John, the author of this book, took what we know from the Bible of that story of Philemon and Onesimus. Is that how you say it? Onesimus? I think so. but she took that story and made it like a whole book. And it's really cute. I really liked it. Basically, Onesimus is a slave and Philemon is his master. They live in the time after Jesus' death when Paul's around, so you get to meet Paul. And it's this story about Onesimus as a slave, but also like he's free in Christ. Yeah, it was really interesting. I definitely really loved it. And I'm not sure why these next books are here, because I did not read them last year. But all of these are different devotionals that I've done over the years. One on Proverbs, there's an Advent one about Thanksgiving. Yeah, it's just a bunch of different devotionals I've collected. Maybe it just ran out up top and I stuck them down here. I don't really know, but more devotionals. So good. Next is The Good News of Our Limits by Dr. Sean McGeever. Dr. McGeever was actually one of my professors a few years ago, and he's so cool. I love him. And he's written several books, but this is one of the books that he's written. And so I grabbed it and read it, obviously. And it's so good. I highlighted so much in this book. But basically, it's what the title says, The Good News of Our Limits. And how as humans, we're limited in so many ways, like physically, but also spiritually, emotionally, and all the other areas. And how in today's culture, we're encouraged to try to move past our limits and be unstoppable. And we can do anything we put our mind to. And that's not what God calls us to. God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. I don't remember what verse that is, but it is a verse. Look it up, it's good. But basically accepting our limits and knowing that we have limits and that God is the one who doesn't have limits just gives us a whole new perspective on life. And it's really good. Definitely recommend. Love Does by Bob Goff. This is a fun little book. Bob Goff tells a bunch of stories about how love has impacted him and his life and the people around him. Yeah, it was pretty fun. I like this book. The Screwtape. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I mentioned this earlier. I've read this book twice, maybe 3 times now. I read it once in high school, and then I read it again last year, so maybe twice. This book is crazy. If you have not heard of the Screwtape Letters, basically it's like a satirical writing. So it's C.S. Lewis created these demon characters. So it's a elder demon writing to like a newer demon on how to best get Christians to fall away from Christianity. So it's kind of weird reading it because it's the opposite advice of what you should take. So you have to like really pay attention when you're reading, but it's really good. C.S. Lewis is really wise and a lot of the stuff in here is really good. And then I already mentioned this, but All Caps You. Read that last year, super good. The Master Plan of Evangelism. I read this book with a bunch of us from my college group, and my college pastor read this together. And we did like little Bible study once a week. And it's so good. Basically, it's following how did Jesus evangelize in his ministry and what can we take away from how Jesus did it, because obviously that was the perfect way to do it. How can we imitate that in our own lives? So, small book, but so good. Again, I think I highlighted this a ton. Oh, we're so close. Alright, next is a series. This is the Waterfire Saga series. It has Deep Blue, Rogue Wave, Dark Tide, and Sea Spell. It's a fantasy. It has to do with mermaids and all the different kingdoms and yeah, just like battles, sea fights. It definitely is more of a YA, so it's definitely more like middle school, high school read, but super fun. I love this series. I have the selection. I've talked about the selection quite a bit. I'm actually missing 3 of the books currently because my sister's reading them. I finally convinced her to read this a few years back, and she loved it as I knew she would, and so she's rereading them now. But the selection's so fun. It's basically The Bachelor, but like fantasy, medieval times, dystopian. Super good. How to Disappear. This book I read, I think, in middle school. I got it for free at my library. But it's so good. It has to do with mental health and also suicide, so trigger warning for that. It's also about like the effects of social media and being able to create a persona of yourself that's not really yourself. Super good. April Showers. This is by Brianna Swan, who I found on Instagram a few years back, and she's so talented at writing poetry and singing and songwriting, and she wrote a book too, so I read it, and it's so good. I think this is about when I started tabbing books. This might have been the first book I tabbed, but it's really good. It's a Christian romance, and they're in college. Talks about like mental health and Christianity and like how those can go together, so really good book. The last one. This is one of the only thrillers I've ever read, and it's so good. Oh my goodness. It had me hooked the whole time. Basically, it's this television show, kind of like survival or like one of those like that where you have to like survive out in the wilderness. I don't want to spoil it, but something happens and then the contestants no longer know what is truth and what is lies. Oh my goodness, it's fascinating. And the ending, it's so sad. Oh my goodness. I kind of wanted there to be a sequel just because it ended so sadly, but like there's hope, but the character doesn't know there's hope, and yeah, it's really good. It definitely makes me want to read more thrillers. Tuck Everlasting. My college actually did a play of Tuck Everlasting, and I'd never really heard of it before. Or I'd heard of the name, but I didn't know what it was. So I went to the play, and it was so good. And then I was in Canada last summer. I saw this book at a bookstore, so I immediately grabbed it. And it's really good. It's definitely, again, it's a children's story, so it's not the best writing ever, but it's really cute and good, so I like it. The next two books are Helping Without Hurting and Before You Go. These are two books that I've used the past 2 summers as preparation to go on a mission trip to Canada, which is where I got that last book. Helping Without Hurting is basically what it says. It's how to go on a mission trip and help the people you're going instead of hurting them. Because there's a lot of ways, like with cultural aspects, where we can think we're helping someone and we're actually hurting them. So that was really good to go through. Before You Go is a 40-day devotional that you read before you go on a mission trip, and it's just really good. It talks about spiritual warfare or cultural things, stuff you're going to experience, coming back into your own culture, all sorts of stuff like that, and it's super helpful. So if you're going on a missionary trip at some point, these are 2 really good books that I would recommend for that. Safely Home by Randy Alcorn. I was going thrifting with some friends, and one of my friends recommended this book. She had read it before. Oh my goodness, this book wrecked me. Oh, it's so good. It follows an American businessman and his Chinese friend, and I believe they were friends in college, and then this follows them much later in life. And basically it's comparing and contrasting the American Christian's experience with a Chinese Christian's experience. In America, we're so privileged to be able to have the freedom of religion, and in China, it's not that case. And yeah, it's a really powerful story, so definitely recommend this one. The Fault in Our Stars. This is a book that, again, everyone is like has read it, and I never read it before. And I think I gave it like a 4-star. It's definitely a powerful story. Didn't resonate with it too much. The 2 main characters have cancer, and so it's a really sad book, but pretty good book. Next is Hella. This is another book that I got at my library book sale, so I liked the cover and thought it was interesting. It's a dystopian book, so they're living on this planet Hella. Very dangerous on Hella. Like everything is massive and huge, and they're constantly just surviving on the planet. So yeah, it was definitely interesting. I don't remember much other than that. It was definitely kind of a slow read. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but interesting book. If you're into sci-fi, you might like it. Fading Starlight. This is another book that I randomly thrifted because it was a Christian romance, and it was really cute. It was like very, very subplot of romance, but it was really cute. Basically, it's about this girl who's a dressmaker, and I believe she lives in California. Yeah, honestly, I don't remember the plot too much, but I really liked it. I want to say I gave it 5 stars. It was pretty good. Last book on the shelf. Shards and Ashes. I really love this book. I got this book because it's a collection of short stories, one of them being by Veronica Roth, who wrote Divergent and Carve the Mark. So I read this in middle school, and then I could not remember what it was called until last year I found it. It's so good. It's hard though because they're all short stories. So like half the short stories in here are 5 stars, and then the other half are like 3 or 4. So I think overall I gave this a 4-star, but some of the stories in here are so good. I love them. They're all dystopian. So if you like Divergent, Carve the Mark, Hunger Games, The Testing, that kind of stuff, you'd probably like this one too. Oh my gosh, that took so long. One more shelf. And like I was saying, this bottom shelf is all series that either like I have read before, but it's been a while, or series that I found, but none of them are complete. So either I'll have like the first or second book or whatever. Yeah, let's go through them. This will probably not take as long, just because it's kind of random books. I think I'll probably just pull out one book from each series and just kind of, if I have anything to say about it, we'll see. So we got Rush Revere. This was a series that I believe I read in middle school. It's kind of like a historical fiction, and I don't remember really much about that, but it's like time travel. So I remember it being really fun. But yeah, so I have a few books of that, but not the whole series. Then another time travel historical fiction, The Flashback 4. Again, this is another like middle school read, but I remember really liking it. All of these honestly are thrifted. So whenever I see a series that I remember as a kid, I try to thrift it and eventually maybe find the whole series. And then these next books, I have like half the series, but this is I think it's called Spy School. The first one's called Spy School. Honestly, all of Stuart Gibbs' books I loved as a kid. It's basically Spy School. Spy School is the first one, and then each of them kind of goes on. But yeah, I love that series growing up, so I want to find all of those eventually. And then I think the first book is called Gone. The first book of the series is called Gone. It's a dystopian, and they're thick books, oh my goodness. But basically there's a nuclear power plant that like goes wrong, and the city is encased in a bubble, and I forget the age, but it's like everyone under 15 stays in the bubble and everyone else disappears. That might not be the right age, but that's the premise. And yeah, it's super interesting. I don't remember much because it's been years since I've read it. Slowly trying to find the series. Oh my gosh, I didn't know I had this. This is part of the Legend series, which is a book that I've heard so much about. Wait, that's so cool. Yeah, again, I don't know really what Legend's about, but I've heard good things about it. So cool. Not me forgetting what books I have on my shelf because I have so many. Next is A Series of Unfortunate Events. I started reading this probably like in middle school, and I never finished it. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like these are easy to find in thrift stores, so we'll see. Then Percy Jackson. I think I've read the first Percy Jackson book and like watched maybe like one of the movies, but yeah, I really want to read this book. And then I guess there's also another series because this is part of the Percy Jackson world, but it's not in the series. I'm not really sure, but I thrifted that. I don't know, we'll see. This is A Tale of Magic, which I think this is like a spin-off series of The Land of Stories. Not really sure, but again, this is a series and I think this is the first one. I don't know. We'll see if I can find the rest of these. We got Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. This is, I believe, one of the sequels. I think there's multiple sequels to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I didn't even know there were sequels to that book, but here it is. And then the rest of these, honestly, I don't know anything about. Finding Casey, Being Mary Bennett, The Story Peddler. This one looks so interesting. I don't know what it is about this. And I want to say this is like a Christian book too. I could be wrong, but I want to find the rest of this series. Never Let Go, Jaded. Oh, I lied. Okay. Remember, these books up here, they're all by the same author. She has more books, but these are series that I do not have all of them. The Sisters of Seaview, A Winter by the Sea, and An Ivy Hill Christmas. I actually found all of these books and then the ones up there all together, and they're all Christian romances and like also historical fiction. So I really want to read them. They're probably fantastic. I just haven't read them. On Magnolia Lane and Honeysuckle Dreams. This is a Christian romance trilogy and I have 2 of the books. So I want to find the third one. The Bachelor's Bargain and A Courteous Cad. Again, another Christian romance trilogy with only 2 books. I don't know why people donate 2 out of the 3 books. Oh my gosh, that is it. Dude, I think I've been yapping for like at least an hour. This video is going to be long. I thought this was going to be a quick, like, let's just sit down and look at my bookshelf for 10 minutes. It, in fact, was not that. But yeah, this is my bookshelf. If you have read any of the books on here that I have not read, let me know. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions. Maybe there's one of your 5-star books on here, and tell me because I will read it because I have it. I just need an excuse to read it. That'll be it for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.